This quantum field is who you are. It's not something for you to connect with. It's you. You are the quantum field coming into form. It's a flip. We think we are form trying to connect to the quantum field, but what if you were the quantum field coming into form? We know that science shows us that you have an effect on your environment. You change the photons just by looking at them. You change the physical world just by being in it. And it's pretty potent stuff. Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Art of Awakening podcast, where the art of living awake becomes a daily practice. I'm your host, Dr. Sue Morter, and today we are diving into a topic that is fascinating. Microtubules and consciousness and how they bridge the gap between biology and quantum mechanics. Oh my God, weren't you just waking up this morning thinking you wanted to talk about that? Okay, well, I'm going to make sense out of it for you because it is a fascinating part of the bridge between the divine and being human, your divinity and your humanity, your capacity as a creator versus being stuck in a body that you're unhappy with, in a life that you're unhappy in. These little microtubules carry information. They carry a flow. They're tiny little structures within your brain cells, and some scientists believe that they act as a quantum processor, playing a key role in consciousness and spiritual experiences. I know for a fact that they are the streams of consciousness that are quickening into flow and then quickening into this gelatinous aqueous solution that becomes in the developing embryo, the zygote, which becomes the embryo, which becomes the developing multiple systems of your body, because my consciousness has traced that in meditation before. I'm going along on a ride, and these things are starting to appear in my view field inside of a deep state of meditation. And I'm witnessing this energy differentiating into these tiny details. So think of it like the ocean versus the rivers that are pouring into it versus the tiny little tributaries that are pouring into streams and into the rivers and then into the ocean. So if you reversed that, one giant field of consciousness differentiating into tiny flows, more and more detailed flows that become more and more physically quickened and thickened and compressed into the physical systems that we know as a nervous system and the system of skin around the body, or the systems of organs and glands, or the specific immune system, or the nervous system and the nerve impulse, or the hormonal system. All of these systems are systems of flow that have come from a larger container that is the unified field. Science knows this unified field to be this aqueous solution, and as it thickens and thickens and thickens, it eventually becomes physical matter. And so these little tubules are some of the first shapes that get built in terms of moving from being pure energy as liquid light and then into this aqueous solution that begins to develop the embryo in the womb. It's pretty fascinating. So this whole process of it offers a glimpse into how the physical and quantum worlds intersect. So I was, of course, thrilled when science started reporting such things, because here I am having these experiences in my own consciousness with no doubt about it, and recognizing how they each represent a different vibration. Now, you can probably imagine this if you think about your bones are vibrating at a more dense frequency than your emotions are. And in between that might be your hormonal system or your nerve impulse, system of carrying information. So that at different vibrational frequencies, we begin developing different systems of flow. And those systems of flow operate inside the body as healing systems or communication systems, etc. All of it is a great unfoldment of this unified field. Quantum worlds intersect here, and it opens a door for us to understand a little bit more about how biology connects into this infinite field of possibilities. Just think about this field just folds over and over and over and over upon itself. And in those enfoldments, further and further quickening happens, or thickening, or becoming more and more physical with each compression and the folding over in this way, until it eventually generates this physical body with all of the miraculous systems that are interacting and interplaying to support this body that you are living in. So inside this episode, we're going to explore what these microtubules are and their role in the brain, and how they may function as these quantum processors, moving from the infinite into the finite. They're just little tunnels of gateways, if you will, linking the brain to the quantum field. The connection between microtubules and spiritual experiences is immense. We're going to speak about that a little bit, and what this means for our understanding of consciousness and awakening. Okay, so I promise to make it user-friendly, and let's dive in. So what are the microtubules that I'm speaking about? So they're tiny tube-like structures that are found within the cytoskeleton of the brain cells, and that is the neurons that you are more familiar with, a little nerve cell. All right, they provide structural support and help with the intercellular communication. So it's from one cell to another. These little microtubules are part of this connective matrix of communication, and their role goes really beyond what we know as basic biology. They actually perform a method of communication that allows an instantaneous awareness throughout your entire system at once. So the nerve impulse, for instance, travels down the neuron from one point to another. And these tubules are also doing such, but they go in every direction, everywhere in your physical body, so that we actually are made aware of something, profoundly, instantaneously. And the reason for that organization is that we are designed to be receiving information from the cosmos on an ongoing basis and processing that information completely through the brain in our gut and the brain in our heart and the brain in our head, ultimately receiving the information that actually begins on an energetic level through these tiny little channels where energy can pass through. So kind of fascinating. So microtubules as these quantum processors means they're processing, they're helping to gather and channel energies to where these energies are required most. If you think about epigenetics, where these little antennas on the surface of every cell are picking up energy frequencies and relaying that information inside the cell to tell the cell what to do, what kind of chemistry to produce, or to turn it on or to turn it off. And this form of gathering information is also represented through these tubules inside of every cell of the body, inside of every component of our system. It is through these channels of flow that this information ever arrives to these little antennas, and we can go about the processing of information from a vibrational frequency level, generating chemistries and neurotransmissions that arrive up through the heart and up into the brain in such a fashion that the brain can translate this information into images and perceptions and ideas, etc. It's how we operate when we are operating in our creative genius. And as such, we're not basing our knowledge on linear research. We're basing our knowledge on a knowing, the Gnostic way of perceiving. And there were entire civilizations that were living in this way, this perceptive field, aware of the use of this sort of information gathering and this wisdom producing presence. And what I love about what is happening for us through science today is that we're able to put our finger on how that might have been possible. And science, selectively is looking at it saying, this might be how we are able to process information in a nonlinear fashion. If you go back in spiritual study into the ancient texts, you will see that there were civilizations that were 100% living this way. And as such, they had access to information that we now are only discovering through this scientific technology that we are producing. I used to wonder, how did they know? How did in Eastern India, how did they know what was happening in the systems of the body before the electron microscope was even developed, before the microscope was even developed? And I was always curious about that until I started meditating, and these things started opening in my own consciousness. And all of a sudden I was having movies play out in my meditations that were showing me things that science, that current science is discovering, but I could tell how they were able to recognize these systems and how they flowed just by observing what was happening in the interior of their system through meditation. So these masters were tapping these frequencies and teaching from this place long before our modern science was able to develop ways of proving it to our left brain the way that we're used to translating information in any sort of reputable manner. So there is a historical study from Penrose and Hameroff, who proposed that microtubules process information at the quantum level, and it is a reduction theory that has been in place for quite some time. But this is what I'm talking about when we're referencing that we're looking for logical ways to understand something that exists beyond what we refer to as logic. What is helpful is that quantum theory is coming into the picture and updating what we would perceive as logical. For instance, in linear physics, we would say it's illogical that you can ever, we talk about this on the podcast from time to time, that you have to go through A to B to C to get to D. And now quantum science is saying, nope, you can have D and it can even go backwards, or you can get in the middle and go both ways. It's not the way we think it is, which in our lives means you don't have to earn your way into heaven, for instance. You don't have to be a good person in order to deserve to have something go your way. You just have to vibrate in a certain frequency that requires sincerity and it requires integrity, but you don't have to suffer to get there. And it requires that you not judge. And if you do not judge, you are able to access these higher and higher realms of consciousness, and your life begins to look like heaven on earth. And so the stories kind of shape differently. They shape shift a little bit, that we've been taught over time about earning our way in or getting approved of. And these kinds of ideas are just, they're dissolving inside of what we're waking up to as a humanity. And I love that that is happening, and I hope that our humanity supports the evolution of that and the sustainability of that by embodying it. When you awaken and become what these things are I'm speaking of, it can never be lost. It can never be taken away. It can never change for you, because it is who you have become. And this is what the art of awakening is all about. It is allowing you to become, encouraging you to become all that you truly are built to be. Quantum coherence within these microtubules explains the phenomena that we call intuition, non-local awareness, and the interconnectedness of consciousness itself, because it's showing us that this is that there isn't separate realities. There isn't a unified field and then me, that this way of processing information that allows me to just take it in without having to understand it. I can take it in and perceive it and know it without having to learn it in a linear fashion. So if your mind is spinning right now, I just want to say this: you've already been experiencing this. You've already been living this way. But because you've been trained with prejudice on what matters and what's important and what is significant and what is just your imagination and what is to be discarded and what is not scientific, this is all changing. These definitions are changing because of quantum science. And so that you have had some of these experiences, I would encourage you, when you fall asleep at night, to allow yourself to remember them, to allow yourself to call forward again moments of imagination that felt wonderful to you, intuitions that landed and opened your heart, or ideas of your connectedness, or the idea that you were thinking of someone and they called you and you hadn't spoken to them in 10 years. They called you the next day or the next week. All of this is something that is so viable and so representative of what quantum science is showing us. And if you can allow it to be of value, it will enliven you in ways that your logical mind alone can never. And so we've been entrained to depend upon a system that is limited to validate what is valuable. And because the system that we were depending upon was limited, we have deemed limited numbers of limited aspects of reality to be of value. And that is why we're suffering. We're using the wrong systems for evaluation. We are more than logic alone. We can't logically decide what's going to happen tomorrow. We can't logically understand or create something that we would consider miraculous, which is why we pray for a miracle, because we're hoping that there is something beyond logic that could serve and perhaps save some situation that's unfolding in our lives and move it in a better direction. So why would we pray for something illogical if we value logic so much? So it never made sense to me. It's like, wait a second, I think we might be underselling the life experience in the first place. And then when we suffer for having been doing so for so long, we start hoping for something more, when all the while that something more is right here. We just have to learn to entrain our ways of thinking and our ways of evaluating what is possible and what is valid or valuable. We have to shape shift that. And how do we do that and maintain a sense of integrity and a sense of consistency that is reproducible enough to count on it and generate viable systems and societies, and even inside of our relationships and our life choices? Truth is, we can. It just requires integrity. It requires sincerity. It requires a synchronicity and a coherence between you and the unified field. And when you're judging yourself or others, you create incoherence, you create dissonance in the field. And so you are disconnected. And so now inside of that disconnected world, you have to depend on these limited resources to create some semblance of okayness and safety and stability. It's not real. It's not the whole truth, but it works right up until it doesn't. And it doesn't work when we find that we're not fulfilled and that we feel like something's missing. We feel like something's just not right. And so we turn it in on ourselves and we decide that we must be broken because it's not working very well. But that's not what we're here to do. That's not at all what we're here to do. We just have to change our evaluation system. And quantum science is begging us to do that. It's insisting. And it's eventually going to have its way. And the more we open to this and start recognizing that if I will utilize some of the components that are timeless and therefore consistent, have stood the test of time, clearly they are what exists beyond space and time, which is the true you, the true soulful self, the true essence of love and light and honoring the precious and the rare, operating in wonder and in awe, operating with intimacy as a value and vulnerability as a skill. When we're starting to live that way, we're opening up beyond logic and are landing in a spaciousness that is beyond. And that beyondness is intended for you. It is meant to be. It's there that you have intuition all the time. It's there that your non-local awareness finally gets to flourish. And you can start making decisions that are based on the wholeness of your life instead of strategizing for survival in this moment. There's an interconnectedness of consciousness. And so we have like minds coming together and we're flourishing with the potency of the heavens, of the gods and the goddesses, of the deities, of, ancient texts. So I became curious as to why don't we know this? Why aren't we being exposed to this? And there's a better question. And that is, how can we just develop it? Rather than working with, who hid this, or how did this get suppressed, or did we just get lost or confused? The answer is, what is. But the solution to the quandary is, how do we move forward, embracing all of this? And the key is embodiment, and the key is consciousness based in love. We're evolving from a surviving species to a fully conscious, loving species that is here in full creatorship, not standing by and just, kumbaya and just, dancing on the beach and singing to whatever, and not really being productive in life, but allowing all of that to become one, that we become highly productive in a joyous way instead of striving and struggling and, pushing against time and all the things that we do. There's another way, and we're here to blend them and merge them. And these little tubules of connectivity are going to help you out. So they connect you spiritually. Microtubules act as a quantum processor, if you will. They serve as a biological mechanism for accessing higher states of consciousness. Think about it. I got tubules and I got to keep them open, got to keep them clean, got to keep them flowing. And that doesn't happen by left brain conscious, analysis and prediction and projection and filling in the blanks and story writing. It doesn't happen that way. It happens with breathing with nature. It happens with, as my grandmother used to call it, my grandfather actually, letting, getting the stink blowed off of you. He'd stand outside in the wind and just getting the stink blowed off of you. So, he was an Irishman and was always coming up with these fabulous little sayings all the time. But it's cleaning house. It's allowing yourself to breathe fully, breathe with your whole body, breathe with your belly, breathe with your spine, breathe with your shoulder joints and your hip joints. Breathe and inhale and exhale and allow them to just be enlivened in ways that seemingly make no sense at all. But I assure you, I work with a lot of people every day, all year long, year after year, decade after decade. And the people who are doing this are healing, they're transforming, they're awakening, they're having a different life experience than they were having before. And so when we start into utilizing some of these ideas in practical terms, it literally changes how we think. It changes the solutions that we can count on. It changes what we allow ourselves to take action on. And that's what changes everything. These constant little tubules, these channels of communication, they give us explanations for experiences of oneness and the mystical states that we have sought or we have had, those that we have understood or those that we just kind of write off as not really possible. The brain taps into the quantum field of infinite possibilities, and all of a sudden you're using whole brain action instead of one hemisphere or the other at any given moment in time. We were never designed to be operating in those two separate states. We were designed to be integrated, but we've been trained out of wholeness. So the key is, it's going to seem like you're doing some things that aren't logical, that aren't respectable. And you kind of look around and hope nobody sees you, playing in the sand or doing things that are of a creative nature, simply because you're bringing some of that balance back to right brain, left brain activity. Spiritual practices like meditation and breath work and energy work, of course, enhance this quantum coherence in the microtubule flow and allowing deeper connection to the field. I want you to know there is no separation between you and the field. Even saying the word connection to it is tough for me, because I know that there is no disconnection. But if we've been living not perceiving that connection, then reconnecting is something that our mind can grok, can understand. But eventually you will see that this one continuum that comes all the way from the unified field all the way here into this physical domain is nonstop. It's a nonstop flight. There is no interruption, and you're landed here in physical form as the universe itself. That's what's true. So it's ours to learn to embrace it. When we've been trained that, heaven's up there, over there, out there somewhere, and when we die, we're going to go there, I say, nope. Why wait? Don't have to. Let's not. Let's start working with the vibrational frequencies that we would be experiencing if we were in heaven, if it was already here now, then how might we be operating in such a fashion that could allow us to experience our wholeness? And, that's what I'd teach. It's what I'd talk about. And I get to share some of that with you here in the Art of Awakening. And I'm blessed to be able to do that. So we know that this theory challenges our traditional view about consciousness being purely a product and a byproduct of brain activity. But we know that the mind is not in the brain. The brain is a processing center for our physical dimensional version of ourselves, but it is not who we are. You are not your body. Your mind is not in the brain. You are using, by building a body and a brain as a vehicle to traverse the physical dimension, you are utilizing those tissues that you have enfolded over and generated as your vehicle for being here. You utilize them while you're here, but they do not define you. Instead, this whole theory is suggesting that consciousness is non-local and arises in the interaction between the brain and the quantum field. And I'd say that's a lot closer to what's true than what we were taught as we were coming up through school, and how we've been entrained to focus, and the obsession that we have with the brain. While it is illuminating, it's also limiting when we understand that it's merely a processing center. And I'm more interested in, what is it processing? What is it processing? Because if I could get to know that, I could improve the efficiency. And it's very interesting that, tapping into this field in the way that I do has come naturally. It isn't something I was trying to do. It was just an awakening that was destined to happen with me. And I know that it is destined to happen with those that are attracted to this conversation. That's why we're attracted to it. It's what we're doing. We come together. This quantum field is who you are. It's not something for you to connect with. It's you. You are the quantum field coming into form. It's a flip. We think we are form trying to connect to the quantum field, but what if you were the quantum field coming into form? I assure you that if you just practice that when you're falling asleep, just imagine, I don't know what that would be like. You're laying there thinking, it's time to go to sleep. Okay, so I'm the quantum field coming into form. I wonder what she means by that. And I wonder how that would feel, or what I should do to make that, more true for me. Just by posing the question, it begins to have an opportunity to take root. And you start to begin to relate to being more free than you used to be. And all of a sudden you're recognizing, wow, I'm energy coming into form, and I'm shape-shifting my reality. We know that science shows us that you have an effect on your environment. You change the photons just by looking at them. You change the physical world just by being in it. And it's pretty potent stuff. We've just not been taught how to manage that in any sort of responsible or productive manner. So we just don't. We just default into being at the effect of what everybody else has created for us. So, this supports the idea that we are not separate from the universe, but deeply interconnected at the quantum level. I say, not only interconnected, you are that. You are that. By understanding this connection, we can begin to see that our thoughts and our intentions and our energy influence not only our own experience, but everyone's, the world around us. It generates our reality. It generates what happens, and the ease with which you make decisions, and the fact that you choose things that work, or you choose things that don't ever seem to work. When you're in your flow, you choose things and it works, and the next thing you know, there's maybe some obstacle and crossing the path, and you look over here and you see another thing to pick, and it moves you right through the obstacle and into, a beautiful reality. It happens, and it happens again, and it happens again when you're aligned in this way. So by getting to know some of these little topics that I bring to you every time, collectively we put some things together. And the next thing you know, we just know things are just okay, even though it looks crazy everywhere you look. So lots of practical applications for this, of course. Learning to meditate, learning to kick your mind into neutral, being lucid and awake, but not thinking. Just do that. If you're like, I can't meditate and get into these states and see all these movies like what you're talking about, it doesn't happen for me, that's fine. Just be lucid and awake and not thinking. Just take your mind, set it down, and just breathe. And just tell it to sit. and stay and heal, all right? And just breathe. And by doing so, what happens is you're dropping this mind down into your belly. You're not setting it aside. You're not taking it off and putting it in another room. You're dropping it down inside the heart and inside the belly and inside the deep core wisdom center of you, because those parts of you are not directed directly by your mind constantly. They are also receiving from little antennas, little energy wave forms that are constantly informing your whole system of a deeper truth than the stories that your mind carries and the filtering system that your mind is operating in this limited way that we were trained to do. There's another part of you that is deeply wise and eternal and constantly present in beautiful ways. And so when we drop our awareness down into this deeper part of our body, we tap into those frequencies. We tap into the parts of us that are attuned to what is actually true, not just what we're filtering with our prejudice and what we've been trained in or what we're trying to avoid through fear. There's more available to you than that. So when you drop down in, now you have access to being influenced by something more than your story. So do it often. Just concentrate in your belly or at the base of the pelvic floor and breathe. And just stay and dwell in there. And do it lovingly, with a loving presence that is as if you're taking care of a part of you that you abandoned so long ago you don't even remember doing it. You shot up into your head and started thinking about how to fit in or how to stay safe or all of the things that your parents handed down to you and then your immediate splat environment created for you. So you just go back and allow that to reconnect. Pull yourself back together again. And when you do, you start to feel a sense of self that you maybe never have felt. And when that happens, know that the reason it feels so good is that you're receiving the truth of the universe, not filtered by your own prejudice. It's a different world, and you're going to love that you're sitting in it. So these practices generate quantum coherence. So you don't have to worry about deep meditation and that may come later. It may come if you get into a course with me and have, a chance to study more deeply and drop in a guided way. But what will happen for you in an instant is that you will realize you can be lucid and conscious and not thinking. You can just be feeling and perceiving and receiving. You don't have to try to make sense out of words or any sort of, wisdom that comes to you in that moment. It's not about that. It's about establishing a state where wisdom will rise in its right moment, where you will have access to this unified field of consciousness and infinite possibilities will start occurring to you as your possibilities in time, but not in those moments of stillness where you're dropping in to this coherent space of meditation and mindfulness deep within the core of your own being. Okay, so obviously energy practices, techniques, breath work, visualization, these kinds of things help you align that whole energy field and allow it to dial into the same frequency as the entire quantum field instead of being separate and operating differently, which allows you to then access higher states of consciousness. It happens in an order. There's an order to it. You can start today simply by being in your heart, breathing in your belly, allowing what you feel in your heart to come down into your solar plexus, allowing love to melt its way all the way into your solar plexus. And then that's where your ribs splay apart, right down in there. And then allowing it to fall down into the deep, wisdom center, just above and below the navel, and then all the way to the pelvic floor. And then the next thing you know, you'll feel so connected to the earth. And it's not just so you feel better and you feel connected and it's lovely. I mean it because the earth will ground you in such a way that you'll be able to translate higher and higher states of consciousness because of the grounding facilitation of the earth. The earth is a body of energies that you can draw upon that will allow you to deepen your roots so that you can go higher and higher with your capacity to perceive greater and greater truths about you and about life and about what we're capable of. So When you have a singular focused mind on such things, you begin to influence this entire quantum process. And so if you're ever going to set an intention, I would 100% direct it toward feeling your connection deep within your core, because then what is intended for you will become obvious to you instead of you driving it with your mind as we've been taught to do. So what happens then is the brain starts responding to something that's happening deep within instead of just coming up with ideas on its own about what I should be intending for myself and setting goals and reaching for my visions, etc. You can reach success that way, but you will not reach fulfillment that way. And the way I'm describing, you can have both. There's been great success in my life, far, far beyond what I ever even imagined when I was living as a linear being, trying to work hard and do it all correctly, and in my clinic doing all the things that it takes to be a good doctor and to be a good citizen and to be a good friend and to be a good daughter and all of those things. It's a different world. Exponentially more successful than I ever dreamt I would be. So no one can ever tell me that operating from this place does not lend itself to productivity. I am more productive. I do 10 times more things in a day than I ever thought I could when I was running a busy clinic and operating, managing other doctors and an entire staff and seeing patients all day long. It's another world. It's a quantum world that I'm living in, and you are too. The question is, are you turning it on and harnessing it and using it to your advantage as much as possible? So let's. Certainly what we're interested in doing together here in the art of awakening and allowing your desired reality to flourish automatically because it is meant to be. Just have to learn to use our faculties differently than how we were trained. And absolutely allowing these channels, these little tubules of connectivity to be enlivened in us is one way. So breathe with your whole body and connect it to the earth and allow yourself to belong more than you ever have before. And allow your intuition and your imagination and your hunches and your inspirations to have more value than they used to. And you're starting to enter into the quantum world that is your world, meant to be. And that is what you're awakening to. So thank you for spending time with me today in the Art of Awakening podcast and for blending science and spirituality in these ways to empower you to create a life that you truly love living. It's why you came. Let's get busy being that. Remember to subscribe and share this episode with family and friends. Please, thank you. I love being here with you and have a deep, deep love for humanity. So it's nice to be here in that space with you. Until next time, I'm Dr. Sue Morter. Blessings to you all. Bye-bye for now.